Hey, and welcome back, YouTube gamers, to Retro RPG Reviews. In this episode, I'm going to review the infamous and landmark Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Adventure module, The Tomb of Horrors. Said by some to be the ultimate killer dungeon, the Tomb of Horrors has been heaped with both praise and scorn in its 39-year history. In this video, I'm going to look at the history of this module, talk about the things that have propelled it into legendary status, and talk about why this module is a must-have for any potential dungeon master. Just a word of warning, this review contains some minor spoilers, but I will not be giving specifics as to the exact traps and creatures contained herein. So, let's get started, shall we? The Tomb of Horrors was written by the master DM and creator of Dungeons & Dragons himself, Gary Gygax. It was initially presented as a tournament module for the Origins 1 convention in 1975. The module's premise revolves around the exploration of the trap-filled final resting place of the evil wizard, now turned lich, Asirak. Though unbeknownst to the players as the scenario begins, the lich has evolved into something far worse and foul. In just about every way, the Tomb of Horrors breaks the rules on adventure design. The backstory is minimal at best. Character death is not only a possibility, it is quite likely. The progress through the module is mostly linear, with only one real path to success, and there is no time pressure. The module tends to challenge the players rather than the characters. For example, if you are role-playing a massive, dumb, thickly accented barbarian used to blundering through things by force, I'm sorry to say, but your barbarian is going to die. Asirak does not suffer fools lightly. However, I cannot stress enough that the Tomb of Horrors is a master class in trap and dungeon construction. It is both elegant in its design and ruthless in its execution. The various traps within are designed specifically to entice the curious and lure the inquisitive to their doom. Any DM who peruses through these 12 scant pages of module lore and doesn't find themselves laughing out loud, perhaps a bit maniacally, should probably fold up their DM screen and choose another vocation. Let me also warn you that the Tomb of Horrors is quite creative in the way it finds unique and interesting ways to mutilate, kill, and embarrass the players. To quote the lore master himself, cruel, but most entertaining for the DM. One might think the role of the Dungeon Master here is to be adversarial, and many dissatisfied players over the years have accused the module of encouraging this, but this is not the case. This module is specifically designed to challenge the players. It is one massive thought experiment. Asirak did not create this tomb to challenge the characters. He created it to kill them. For his immortality depends on his remains being left alone. However, like any egotistical madman, his conceits can be his undoing, for in many cases, Asirak can't help himself but to espouse taunts that potentially can lead to the player's success. But it is not meant for the DM to be forgiving here. If this is to be a true test of player skill, then enforcement of events, however cruel they may be, is a must. Any novice DM can design a killer dungeon that takes little imagination or skill. It is quite another thing to do it with style, and it's hard to say that the Tomb of Horrors is really a killer dungeon, because, in reality, it generally only punishes the foolish. But, when it does punish, the penalty is frequently harsh and permanent. To truly appreciate the intent of the module, one must understand the reason for its design. In his introduction to the Return to the Tomb of Horrors box set, published by TSR as a sequel in 1998 and written by Bruce Cordell, Gary Gygax explains, "There were several very expert players in my campaign, and this was meant as yet another challenge to their skill and the persistence of their theretofore invincible characters. Specifically, I had in mind foiling Rob Kuntz's PC, Robilar, and Ernie Gygax's PC, Tensor. Second, I was basically ready for fans or players who boasted of having mighty PCs able to best any challenge offered by the AD&D game. The module was first released in 1977, and then again in 1978, with updated rules for the first edition of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game. It also included a booklet with black and white illustrations to show the players as the adventure progressed. Some of the illustrations actually contained visual clues for the players about what they were facing. The illustrations are nominally artistic, but the black and white art, along with the descriptive text, does add to the oppressive atmosphere of the place. The Devil's Head visage being one of the images very closely associated with the Tomb of Horrors, for some rather insidious reasons, which I will not disclose here. So much so has it been associated with the tomb that a little homage to the Tomb of Horrors was given in the Herring Hall's 3D tile set as shown here. The number of monsters in the module are shockingly few, with almost all encounters being of the tricks or traps variety that must be worked out in order to get to the next section of the tomb. Even if a referee chooses to never run this module, a dissection of its contents will provide some insight in the creation of devious and wicked traps to fool your players. I would not recommend running this module as written for an ongoing group of characters. First and foremost, many players will simply not be up to the challenge posed by this module. In any successful adventure, it is imperative that the DM craft a scenario that challenges the players sitting before him. Gary Gygax designed this scenario for a specific group of expert players that were in his own group, and the module is intended for experienced, crafty players who like puzzles and prefer to think their way out of things. If this does not describe your group, then modifications will be in order. In his introduction to the module, Gygax specifically says this: as clever players will gather from the reading of the tomb, Legend of the Tomb, this dungeon has more tricks and traps than it has modules to fight. This is a thinking person's module, and if your group is a hack and slay gathering, they will be unhappy. In the latter case, it is better to skip the whole thing than come out and tell them that there are few monsters. On the other hand, brain work is good for players, and they will benefit from playing this module, for individual levels of skill will be improved by reasoning and experience. If you regularly pose problems better solved by brains and not brawn, your players will find this module immediately to their liking. But make no mistake, this module certainly has the potential to completely derail your campaign in that respect, and I think that over the years this is why the module has gained a somewhat negative, or at least notorious reputation, with inexperienced DMs thoughtlessly introducing it to their campaign milieu. On the other hand, in the care of a skilled dungeon master, many players over the years have reported that this is the very first time they were actually scared within the confines of a role-playing game. There are several ways to introduce this module to your group. One is whereby you carefully reduce the penalties therein, as so that death is less likely. Or, two, perhaps as a one-off adventure, with pre-generated characters specifically rolled up for the module. A third, more creative idea is to pick up the Return to the Tomb of Horrors box set on eBay or in PDF form, and then run the tomb as a dream sequence where the characters all have the same dream, perhaps playing the characters' distant relatives in the past going through it. This will have no other impact on your campaign other than to introduce the players to the tomb's existence. Then, when they investigate, you can proceed with the events that take place in the box set, which, let me add, is quite an excellent adventure in its own right. Over the years, there have been a few updates to the original module for later editions. I've already mentioned the Return to the Tomb of Horrors box set, written by Bruce Cordell and produced by TSR in 1998. In Halloween of 2005, Wizards of the Coast released a free update online written by Bruce Cordell for the 3rd edition of the game. In July 2010, Wizards of the Coast released 2 adventures bearing the Tomb of Horrors name. One is a hardcover super adventure written by Ari Marmel and Scott Fitzgerald Gray, which builds on and expands the legend of the original tomb using the canon of Return to the Tomb of Horrors as a starting point. The second Tomb of Horrors is a direct conversion and update of the original module for 4th edition rules, written by Scott Fitzgerald Gray, and released to members of the RPGA as part of the Dungeon Master Rewards program. The Return to the Tomb of Horrors box set expands upon the legend of the tomb significantly, and is worth a read if you are thinking about running it, even if you don't plan on running the material therein, because it does just a wonderful job of giving a more insidious and vile reason for the tomb's deadliness, other than the obvious. In addition to the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which I reviewed in my previous video, I frequently find myself returning to this module when my DM's plot juices are in need of rejuvenation. A little examination of the structure of things and the processes behind them that tends to get me in the right frame of mind to design my own insidious death traps. Getting a copy of the original Tomb of Horrors is relatively easy in the digital age. The third edition of the Tomb of Horrors is readily available as a free download on the Wizards of the Coast website, a link for which is provided in the About section of this video. The actual out-of-print Return to the Tomb of Horrors box set usually goes for around $75 or more on eBay, and it should be noted that a reprint of the original module was included within. Another option is to search Google for PDF copies, which can be found with even a modicum of internet searching skill. However you choose to approach this module, you cannot help but be enriched by its inclusion in your collection. Though, if you do intend on running it for your players, I hope you find the tips within this video helpful to the success of the endeavor. Well, that's about all I have for this episode of Retro RPG Reviews. In my next review, I'm going to take a look at Volo's Guide to Waterdeep. Until then, may your D20 always roll true, and game on.